health and a little wealth and a lot of love.
So how did you apply that to building your marketing? So you had mentors.
Yep.
And so you worked in insurance for a while. And then how did that move into AI? What a really interesting.
So I went through a few captive companies. And during that time, I realized every time I signed a contract. And I was always captive. And I only, when I left, was able to get out of the contract by giving them my book of business that I built up. So after the first one, I incorporated an LLC where it was my company that contracted instead of me. Gave me a little bit of liability protection.
How did you know how to do that?
I learned from the last contract.
Smart.
That it was on me. And if they came after me for that money and I wasn't able to negotiate back.
So how old were you when you first contracted this one? This is important because like a lot of my listeners are actually younger.
Yep.
And like this is great advice, you know? And so, yeah, tell me your like the age differences.
So I was 22 in my life insurance journey. When I left there and went to the captive P&C side, I was 23. They had churn on the business, which means that people either canceled their policy or they wrote with somebody else. And so I had a negative vector, which I didn't know what that means. They threw that big word at me. I had to figure out what it means, which means that they had a loss on me as an employee because we had lost more money than we made on commissions. And since I canceled, they couldn't do a chargeback on me because I'd already left. So they had a negative vector on that and they tried to sue me over that. Well, I went to bat and said, listen, I did my job. I left. Y'all assume that responsibility. Jeez. And so that's on you as an agency. It's on you. And I had to grow a pair and tell them that, which was nerve-wracking. But luckily, I did have a good mentor at the captive agency. I told him everything, was transparent, and I was scared. I'm like, what do I do? And he said, give him the finger, tell him to talk to your attorney. They're not going to be able to do anything. We all know that that's the risk you have when you hire people on in these businesses. Right. So did that, built this up over here, realizing now that that was a bad contract, but it was a good opportunity to learn. He taught me how to be the professional in the job. That taught me how to take care of people, but I failed that contract because I didn't know how to market. So then I went on to independent after that. I hired 13 people because I learned it's not me that grows this, it's a team that grows it.
That's right.
And so I hired 13 people. 2 of those were producing a business, and I was producing enough to get by. And I put together the agency, and we were independent. So I had Progressive, Travelers, Grange, all these carriers that we were going through, and I thought the broker method was the better method.
So you're an entrepreneur.
I am an entrepreneur.
That's awesome. So this is when you are like really like, I argue that any person who's a 1099 employee, you know, they are somewhat of an entrepreneur, right?
100%.
And then so like, how old were you when you first started this LLC? And
that was 23.
23.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 23.
You might have just had this innate with you.
I've always been an entrepreneur mindset. Like, I want to figure it out for myself. I want to be independent. I've never been able, I'm a terrible employee. Like, even I've got buddies of mine now who just left one of the companies that I use for some of my systems. He and I became friends because I'm one of the top producers for that system and I bring them a ton of money, and he was helping develop it. So we were like this. I'm going to him, talking to him about everything that I need for the system to be successful. And he's going to the developers and getting it done. He's talking to the CEO of that company saying, this is the direction we need to move in. He got fed up with it and he left. And now he's got this, what's really cool, are these virtual offices. I don't know if you've seen these things. You literally have a desk with your little head in it. You can go into your office and shut the door and people don't know, like they can't access you when the door's shut.
That's cool.
You open the door and they can access you. He invited me in. He's like, hey, we started our own thing over here, but you're the only person we want in this office with us. So we become friends and we're in there. He invited me in there as of Monday. Today was the first day I got in there. I'm just a terrible, like, working with people person,
right,
unless it's my deal.
Right.
Because for me, if I can control it, I set the standard.
Right.
It's important. But if it's somebody else's standard and I'm like, okay, this is building your thing, but now my people suffer.
Right.
It's hard for me to do that. Like, I am a leader through and through.
Right. You're just like me. I feel that 100%.
With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love. That's the life that we live. Suits and scrubs.